Welcome back to the Wizard Shop, and today we're going to talk about this beautiful Fox body Mustang. You guys have been asking in the comments, and we are going to deliver. This thing is really cool. I haven't seen one of these in the shop for quite a while. Let's take a look. So this is a 1990 Mustang GT Convertible. It's actually a friend of Tyler Hoover, Hoovie's Garage. I think he's his neighbor. But he wanted to get this car up to snuff. And one of the things I really like about this car, and you're going to see as we look through it, is that it's mostly stock. It's not been heavily modified. It's not been tampered with or messed with. This would be the way I would have one of these, is stock. It's in here for the AC not working. It's in here for some switches inside the interior not working. And he thinks when he's driving, there's kind of a weird feel, almost feels loose, like something's wrong with the suspension, and a few other little issues that he had, spark plugs he wanted them changed. But we'll go through and check the car out, and I'll show you what we found with the complaints that the customer had. Let's open the hood. Like I said, this car is stock for the most part. I think it is mostly stock. I really enjoy when I open the hood on one of these cars and it looks as if it did when it came off the assembly line. I really, really like that. A few cars I've worked on before, these Mustangs or Camaros, and I open the hood and it's got purple spark plug wires and a red intake and all kind of weird stuff on it, and it's just, I'm like, nah bro, I'm not having that. This one's nice. We did the spark plugs, they were just aged, they weren't really causing any issues. But I'm going to start the engine. You guys can listen. It has a very long cranking time. That was one of the complaints. So as you saw, it took a little bit to crank it. There's some times when we started it and it cranks and cranks and cranks and cranks to start, and then it finally does start. And as you saw, it started up and then it died. I'm going to let you guys see if you can choose between three options and see if you get it right. What's wrong with this? Why is it doing this? Number one, is it a bad crank sensor causing the issues? Number two, is it a weak and failing fuel pump? And number three, is it an issue with the ignition system with the thick film module that's on the side of the distributor or the distributor itself? I'll give you guys a few seconds and see if you can guess. So we'll go through those three that I listed and we'll start with number one. Is it a crank sensor that's causing this issue? No. Crank sensors don't intermittently work. If they fail, it just won't start at all. If it does start, it'll stay running or somewhat work, and then it may die again. But it doesn't sometimes start, sometimes don't. Sometimes starts and then it dies. There's no weirdness going on. It either does or it doesn't, so it's not a crank sensor. Number three, is it a distributor issue? No, we checked the distributor. It's getting ignition all the time. It's getting good, strong spark. It's not the problem. What we found is when we hook a fuel pressure gauge to the Schrader port that's on the fuel rail, you can crank and crank and crank and the needle won't even move on the fuel pressure gauge. And finally it'll slowly go up to 20 and it'll start. 20 psi is not enough for this. And you can actually drive it, but at 20 psi, if you give it any gas or try to go, it just stalls. It'll cut out. And it's not a fuel pressure regulator either. That's not the issue. The fuel pump itself runs and it works. It's just not putting out the pressure. One of the testing methods you can test this with starting and cranking issues, you can give alternative fuel, which I have a small propane bottle with a little hose, and I give it some propane, and this thing would start up every single time, perfect, and run perfect. As soon as you take the propane away, then your troubles come back again. Boom, that's not a distributor issue. It's also not a crank sensor issue if the addition or removal of propane changes your running parameters. And I'll show you how that works, but it's kind of a lot of tearing down and things. We've already got a lot of stuff back together now that we know what's wrong with this car. So that will take care of the stalling or the hard starting, long cranking time. And the new spark plugs we did just because he wanted to do. There's a lot of age on these plugs. But the rest of the ignition system's in good shape, and that'll take care of that. We also recharged the AC. It looks like it's been converted over to R134. It must have leaked out at some point, but the leak is so small and so tiny that what we did was we added UV dye to the system and charged it back up. Currently it's holding very well. It may take 6 months for this to leak out. But if it does, we will know where it's at by shining a UV light around all the different connections and lines and condenser and different things, and the condensation coming out of the bottom. That's another trick, remember, on the Range Rover. And we'll find out what's going on from there. But from here, it could take us days, weeks to find the leak. The way it is, it's so slow. So that's all we had in the engine bay, really. Let's go take a look in the interior. As you can see, it has 47,000 miles on it, which is really low for one of these. This car is in really, really good shape. Really cool car. And the interior, there's no cracks, there's no tears. The dash is in good shape. The convertible top's in good shape. One of the complaints the customer had was his power mirrors weren't working properly. They would go one direction or maybe another direction, but not the other directions, on both mirrors. That tells me that it's not a bad mirror motor because they're both doing the same thing. What it ended up being is this switch. We tried cleaning the contacts, tried different things, but the circuitry inside is just bad. And we've got a new one on order. But if we were to manually connect the connections here at the connector, we could make the mirrors work in all directions perfectly fine. So the problem here is the switch. So we got a new one of those on order. Another problem he had was with the window switches. The rear right window, the little tiny window, would not work at all from this panel. But if you go over there to that side of the car, it would work perfect. So the issue ended up being the window switch assembly itself. Also on his power locks. It's fixed now, we've replaced this switch, but it was where on the passenger side the power locks would work perfectly. But if you come to the driver's side, it would hardly even work at all. So it just needed a new switch, and now it works great. It wouldn't do that before. A lot of these switches is probably going bad just from sitting. Maybe corrosion or things have gotten in there, but we got the new switch here replaced. We're waiting on the new window switch assembly. That'll take care of his window issue. You can see in the back seat is in good shape, and the convertible window in the back is in good shape, not all scratched up or dinged. It's in nice, clear, clean shape. So all in all, this car is really pretty nice. As you can see, it has tiny little window switches in the speaker grills there. And that's how we knew the windows were working fine. There's no issue with the windows, just switches here in the driver's door. The next issue that he had is while he's driving it, he said it feels like something's loose, or if I hit a bump, the car jars around. It feels really strange, he says. We did some checking, and I was looking at the struts, and it looked like there might be some slight seepage when we had it on the lift. The one thing that I did that really deduced what is wrong with this car is I simply pushed on the front end. It will go down. It won't even come back up. Watch. It just stuck. It won't come back up. I can push it even further. It just sticks there. You can't go over bumps and get a good suspension feel when your struts are doing that. The rears do the same. So this car is going to get all 4 strut shocks replaced. It will slowly come back up, but stiction is so bad inside of these struts that once it goes down, it almost doesn't come back up. It's really, really odd. I've seen this on cars before with 1 or 2 struts, but not all 4. But that is the case with this car. And again, it's probably just from sitting for a long time. But we'll get that taken care of, and that'll take care of his weird feel while he's driving, hitting bumps, and it would feel really weird with that, I imagine. So that is the diagnosis with the suspension issue. Let's take a look around the car and check it out. Like I said, it's in really good shape. It's not showroom perfect like you would find at Barrett-Jackson's or something, but it is very, very nice. So many of these are just roached out by now, or they've got a hold of by teenagers and they've just destroyed them. This one is not, that is not the case with this one. It has been very well taken care of. And the fact that it's here to get these issues solved is proof that the customer takes care of this car. It looks very, very nice. I like the color blue on there with the gray on the bottom, or silver. It's a really nice color combination. The wheels are really cool. They're almost a turbine wheel. Not exactly turbine, but they look really, really good. I think they're missing some caps. There should be some caps there all around, but they still look nice, even as is. There is on front, there's some of the silver coming off. You can see the yellow underneath. That's common on the 90s Fords. It just seems like it's so common. You see so many like that. There's the iconic Fox body front end. It really, really looks really cool. And while we close out this video and we showed the Mustang and what's going on with it, before this Range Rover leaves, I wanted to show you that it's done. You guys watched a previous video where we had all the dash parts and pieces on 2 or 3 different levels of shelving. It looked like a disaster. But it doesn't look like that anymore. We've got it back together, we went and road tested it, and no, there's no dash rattles or any issues. It's quiet as a mouse in there. Magic Mike did a very good job on this. It's all working, the AC works, the heater works, no issues. Let's take a look. Got everything vacuumed, everything cleaned up, everything back together, and everything works. No codes, no issues, no more leaking air conditioner. She will be a happy customer, and to know that while we were there, we did the heater core, the expansion valve, and the blower motor. We did all of those while we were there. So she shouldn't have to mess with this for a long time. Now remember, in the last video, this entire area was an entire open cavity. No seats, no center console, no dash, no radio, nothing. Go check on the previous video. You can check it out if you haven't seen it already. It's scary. It's one of those scenarios you don't want your customer walking in and seeing. And yes, we did do a video, and she's probably watched the video. She's aware of what's going on here. But to actually be in person and see it, it can be quite scary. So thanks for following along on the Mustang. I know you guys wanted to check that out. Now you know why it's here and what we're going to do to fix it. And now you know that this thing is back together without any creaks or rattles in the dash, and it is completely done. So check my Amazon affiliates link in the description below if you haven't already. And if you haven't, hit the subscribe button. I really recommend you do that now. Thanks for watching.